We'll start off with the Mangalacharan prayers, and then we can get started. Nice to see you all. Pasma Mataji, Siddhi Mataji. There are many people. I'm sorry I cannot be able to call everybody, but we'll just get acquainted as we go along. We'll start off with our Mangalacharan prayers, and then we can get started. Is the voice clear, or is the voice a little faint?
It's clear, Prabhuji, to me.
ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं त्वं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्ता राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चना गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभयश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधरा श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मत्समो नास्ति पापात्मा न पराधी च कश्चन परिहारेऽपि लज्जा मे किं ब्रुवे पुरुषोत्तम। भूमौ स्खलितपादानां भूमिरेवावलम्बनम् त्वयि जातापराधानां त्वामेव शरणं प्रभो। गोविन्दवल्लभे राधे प्रार्थये त्वमहं सदा त्वदीयं इति जानातु गोविन्दो मां त्वया सह। राधा राधितराधेश राधिका प्राणवल्लभ राधारमण वन्दे त्वं राधिका प्रेमनिर्झरिता। Hare Krishna. I welcome all the devotees from Austin, from so many places. Thank you so much for joining. And we will continue discussing the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita today. Um, so, if you can share the screen for the second chapter, then we can get started. In the first chapter, just to give a summary, um, Arjuna gives so many reasons as to why he does not fight. And he gives the social reasons, he gives the spiritual or the scriptural reasons, he gives the reasons from his personal perspectives. And the second chapter, at least the first few verses of the second chapter, um, till the eighth verse, we see that Arjuna still has this dilemma. and we can discuss that. Um, Calling in no particular order. Um, can I ask Tejas to read with me, please?
Okay, Prabhu, sure.
Sanjaya Uvacha
Sanjaya Uvacha
Tam Tata Kripayavishtam
Tam Tatha Kripayavishtam
Ashrupurna Kulekshanam
Ashrupurna Kulekshanam
Vishidantam Idam Vakyam
Vishidantam Idam Vakyam
Uvacha Madhusudanaha.
Uvacha Madhusudhana. Sanjay, seeing Arjun full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudan, Krishna, spoke the following words.
Thank you. Next words. Um, can I ask Nitya Tarangini Mataji? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavanuvacha
Kutastva Kashmalamidam
Bhutasva Kashmalamidam
Vishame Samupasthitam
Shame Samupasthitam
Anarya Jushtam Asvargyam
Anaryajustam Asvargyam
Akirtikaram Arjuna.
Akirtikaram Arjuna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy.
Thank you. Thank you. So in the first two verses, Srila Prabhupada writes, what is material compassion? When a person, for example, is having a dire need, a beggar on the street that we can encounter in most parts of the world, would you give money to that particular person? Because apparently, without helping, or a Vaishnava is a paradukka dukhi, and seeing the suffering of others, we feel the same um, pain that they are feeling. But caution has to be exercised, because when one gives charity to people who might not be fit, uh, then that sort of charity might actually enable that person to continue his or her sinful activities. And this, Srila Prabhupada writes that material compassion is like the compassion for the saving man. Does that mean we become hard-hearted, stone-like? Not really, but to understand the truth, we need to see both the sides of that particular person. In the modern context, there are so many philanthropic institutions and hospitals and orphanages, educational institutions, and the community kitchens are the places where mass distribution of food happens. All this is good if it is tied to Krishna. If it is not tied to Krishna, then we might try to solve the problems of that particular person temporarily, but one cannot help them in the long run. So Srila Prabhupada distinguishes the material compassion from spiritual compassion in the first two verses. So let's continue further. Um, is Anshu or Anushri there?
No, Prabhu, they are not there. They'll be shortly joining, Prabhu.
Okay, no problems, Mataji. Just was kidding. Didn't mean to put them
Yeah.
in the spot. Uh, Bapi, Dr. Bapi, can you read with me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Klaibyam smagama partha
Klaibyam asma gamaparta
naitat vai upapadyate
naitatvai upapadyate
shudram hridaya daurbalyam
Shudram Hridaya Daurbalyam
Tyaktotishta parantapa.
Tyaktva Parantapa. O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy.
So Krishna here, he's trying to provoke the anger of Arjuna. Klaibyam means impotence. To call any particular person impotent is a slap, and to call a Kshatriya warrior impotent is actually a very deep insult. But Krishna is saying, here also he's continuing the friendly conversation. He just says, oh, how have these impurities come upon you? You are acting as if you have become too weak. And what is the reason for that? And that's what Krishna is trying to say. And then Arjuna continues with next few verses on why he should not fight. And then Ram Vijay Prabhu, please. Arjuna Uvacha. Okay. Ram Vijay Prabhu is not there. Ram Vijay Prabhu, are you there?
Anshu, Prabhu, Anshu is here.
Acha, good. All right. Okay, let Anshu. Yes, please. Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha
Katham Bhishmamaham Sankhye.
Katham Bhishmamaham Sankhye
Dronam cha Madhusudana.
Dronam cha Madhusudana
Ishubhihi Pratiyotsyami.
Ishubhihi Pratiyotsami
Pujahar Varisudhana.
Pujarha Varisudana. Translation. Arjuna said, O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counterattack, with arrows in battle, men like Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship?
So, as we mentioned earlier in the first chapter, Bhishma and Drona were superiors to Arjuna, and even if they were to be aggressors, they should not be attacked. And Arjuna is repeating the same point. Would you, and then he is counterposing to Krishna. Krishna, would you actually kill your teacher or Guru Sandipani Muni, or your father, or your grandfather Shurasen? What are you? Why are you insisting that I should kill? Sorry, Ugrasen, not Shurasen. Next verse, please. Grandfather Ugrasen. Next 5. Rupa Sagar Prabhu, are you there?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. Guru Nahatva hi mahanubhavan
Guru Nahatva hi mahanubhavan
Shreyo bhoktum bhaikshyamapi haloke
Shreyo bhaktum bhikshamapi haloke
Tatvartha kamamstu guruni haiva
Hatvartha kamamstu guruni heva
Bunjiya bhogan rudirak pradigtan.
Kunjiya bhogan hridaya pradigdam. It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood.
So Arjuna's dilemma is, if he does not fight this battle, the only option for him is to live by begging. and that is not the duty of Kshatriya to beg. On the other hand, if he fights the battle and he wins, then it will be at the cost of his teachers and his grandfather's blood, that his hands will be tainted with those blood. And in those situations, the kingdom is not relishable nor enjoyable, because it won't be guilt-free. Arjuna is thinking that I'll be so guilty even if I become or enjoy. And then if he dies in the battle, then he will go to the heavenly planets. So at least there is that option. If you go to the heavenly planets, then at least he will be happy. So he was thinking like that at this point of time. Another aspect Srila Prabhupada writes is that a guru, if he has lost the sense of discrimination, either in terms of knowledge or in terms of one's activities, then such a guru can be given up. So that relationship, Krishna is trying to say, because Dronacharya and Bhishma merely are fighting on behalf of Duryodhana just for money and just for the financial aspect of it, foregoing the fact that they are fighting on the party that is against the principles of dharma, which means that they have lost their status as teachers. And that's the reason why Arjuna should overlook that. Implicit in that particular verse is that particular statement. Thank you. And then let's come back to the point. I said there were three options. One option was that we could either, he would either forego the battle and then he had to live by begging. It was a painful thing to do. Either he could win the battle and feel very, very guilty about ruling the kingdom. And the third option was that he would be killed and he could go to heavenly planets. That seems to be a kind of better option. Let's keep going. Next verse. Sachin, please repeat after me. Na chaitadvidma kataranno gariyo.
न चैतद्विद्मः कतरन्न नो गैर्यो
Yadva jayeme yadivano jayeyuhu.
यद्वा जयेम यदि वा न जयेयुः
Yaneva hatva na jijivishamas.
यान् एव हत्वा न जीवसामास
Devastita pramukhe dhartarashtraha.
ते वा स्थिताः प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्रः. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield.
Thank you. So, one of the aspects that Srila Prabhupada brings out from this is this is really Arjuna's is kind of really lost it here. Why would he actually go through this whole unfortunate phase when he is ready to fight? The reason why this actually shows the weakness of Arjuna, but on the other hand, it shows the brilliant and the exalted character of Arjuna is mentioned. That even though, please understand, at this point of time, Arjuna had the fire of revenge burning in his heart for the last 13 years. Under no circumstances he wavered. He was told by the sages, you go to the heavenly planets and collect all the weapons that are needed. And he goes to the Indra Loka, or the planet of Indra, where obviously Indra is his biological father, because you know that Kunti called for the various demigods. So you can start typing in chat, who did she call for Yudhishthir? to come? Which, thank you, Yamaraj. And for Bhima, Vayu. Excellent. For Arjuna, Indra. Excellent. And then for Nakula and Sahadev, they are twins. Ashwini Kumaras. Beautiful. So Arjuna went to his father's abode, Indraloka, and in the Indraloka, he was given every sort of comfort and every sort of desirable facility was there. Now imagine this after living in a pretty austere forest conditions. When you go to Indraloka, it is literally, it's not literally, it's literally you can never describe, but an example can be that you are in a ragged tent in the camping site where there is barely any eating, nothing, and then you are suddenly whisked into the best five-star hotel in the world. You can see the gulf of difference between what Arjuna's situation was and what he was feeling like when he went to Indraloka. And Indra said, you should stay here for some more time. And Arjuna said, no, I have to go. My brothers are waiting for me. We have to fight this great battlefield of Kurukshetra. So even his stay in Indraloka did not deter him from his mission of fighting this battle. And that revenge was burning in the heart for so many years now. And all of a sudden, that's why Krishna, who is still speaking to him as friend, says, he expresses surprise. Oh my God, Arjuna, what happened? Just a weakness of heart. Why are you become suddenly weak like this? But Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, this shows that Arjuna's exalted character, that at this point he was willing to forego. He was placing dharma before his idea of revenge. Otherwise, anybody would be like, yes, this is the time I need to. It would be not the other way around. Krishna, should I fight or not fight? Just like, Krishna, time are wasting. Let's go. Let's kill all these people. I need my kingdom now. That would have been Arjuna's mentality, but you can see he's so much deliberating. He's willing to go to forest. And this shows his exalted nature as a Vaishnava and very compassionate. And Srila Prabhupada writes that this is one of the qualities or the characteristics that differentiates Arjuna and his exalted nature compared to others. Next verse. Preeti Vilasini Mataji, Hare Krishna. Are you there? Can you do the next verse with me, Mataji, or Namasmaranam Prabhu? You're there?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Unmuting. Yeah.
Okay. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava.
Karpanya dosho pahata swabhavaha.
Prichhami tvam dharma sammudha cheta.
Prichhami tvam dharma sammudha cheta.
Yachreyasyan nishchitam brohi tanme.
Yachreyasyan nishitam bruhi tanme.
Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam.
Sishyasteham sadimam tvam prapannam. Translation. Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is the best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes the difference. So Arjuna is admitting Karpanya dosho. Karpanya is, who is a Karpanya is mentioned. A Karpanya, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, is a person who doesn't know the value of life and who just comes to the world and goes away from the world without even inquiring as to why I am here, without trying to understand the higher purpose. Srila Prabhupada writes the difference between Karpanya and also between Karpanya. Karpanya is the noun form. Kripana is the person. So Kripana or Karpanya is one and the same. And the other thing Srila Prabhupada writes is that Arjuna, when he started out that morning to fight the battle, he was not expecting himself to be in such a situation where he will be depressed, or where he will be sad, or where he will be feeling uncertain about the whole thing. And this is the nature of this world, that nobody wants to have any sort of trouble, but the trouble starts. And Srila Prabhupada writes that nobody wants the fire, yet the fire starts. I think those living in California, we can have that as a very, very vivid example. What was it? I mean, the conditions were perfect, long heat spells, and we had a thunderstorm that had no rains, but heavy lightning. And that started off, nobody wanted this forest fires, yet we are battling them. And this is just the nature of this material existence. So, and then as much as Arjuna, with all his scriptural knowledge, please understand that he was quoting scriptures. He was quoting so much of um, uh, Shastras in terms of the Jnana and the Dharma and the Artha Shastras, yet he could not resolve his problem. And in this verse, it's a pivotal turn in Bhagavad Gita, where now he approaches Krishna and he says, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. Oh Krishna, I am a soul surrendered unto you. I am your disciple. Please instruct me. Next verse. Parth, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. You're up to it? Or you want to do another verse?
No, I can do it.
All right, let's do it, Parth. Nahi prapashyami mamanupadya
Nahi prapashyami mamapanyudyad
yashokamuchoshunamindriyanam
yakshokamuchosanamindriyanam
avapya bhuma vasapatnaruddham
avapya bhumam vasattapamritham
rajyam suranam api chadipatyam.
rajyam suranam api chadipatyam. I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with how do you say that word?
Sovereignty.
Sovereignty, like the demigods in heaven.
Okay. Earlier, I mentioned about the fact that Arjuna had three choices. He could forego the battle and live by begging. And the second choice was that he could fight the battle and he could kill all the relatives. And then he would enjoy the kingdom, but he would feel very guilty about it. What was the third choice, Tejas?
Sorry, bro, what did you say?
The third choice was that either you die on the battlefield and then do what? Go to heavenly planets or enter the heavenly planets. What does this verse say about Arjuna entering heavenly planets? This verse says that I will not be able to dispel even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom with sovereignty like demigods. Even if I go to the heavenly planets like demigods, I still will not be able to give away or drive away this grief that's just drying up my senses. And Bhagavad Gita actually points to, and I'm sure there are a few doctors in the audience. I know Nikunja Sundari Mataji is here. She can correct me if I'm wrong. But the classic sign of depression is your senses don't seem to act or like anything. Your senses seem to be completely dried up, withered away, and you don't feel like doing anything. and your senses are just not, and they're just as if like the whole energy is sucked out of the senses. And Arjuna was feeling the same way. This is a classic case of just being depressed to the point nothing seems to work. If you tell a man who's clinically depressed, for them no option works, nothing works, and the only means they feel is that just to give up their body and just end the pain of it all. And Arjuna had similar such problems. That's the reason he approached his spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, quoting this beautiful words, Kiba Vipra, Kiba Nashi, Shuddha Kenana, Shei Guru Tattva, Shei Krishna Tattva Jai Krishna Tattva Shei Guru. And he mentions that who is a spiritual master and what is the prime characteristics or quality of the spiritual master. Yesterday we were having a conversation with our spiritual master, and he said that my college was a cave, my graduation was a cave in Europe, and my post-graduation was in Himalayas, something to that extent. I don't remember the verbatim thing. It really doesn't matter how academically a spiritual master is qualified. Now he is capable of giving Krishna, and we all many PhDs have taken shelter at his lotus feet to be delivered from the cycle of birth and death. It's the understanding of science of Krishna that is more important rather than any other qualification. It's a beautiful purport that that one should take time to remember, because one of the benefits that you come in the class is you never know what sort of questions or clues you can get for questions that can come in exam. So, please read up this purport. You never know what will happen with this purport. Next verse, please. One last point on this verse. Let the screen be, Sri Shamataji. One last point is the 7th verse. Arjuna says, Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam, which means, oh Krishna, I surrender unto you. And the Acharya, they say immediately Krishna should have started telling him the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. But nevertheless, there is one more verse after that. And internally, the Acharyas write, the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna is going something like this. Krishna is saying to Arjuna, hey Arjuna, suddenly you have made me your guru. I don't want to be your guru. I'm your friend. And besides, you know everything that's going on. So why don't you consult the scriptures and you can solve your problem. And then Arjuna says that the scriptures have pointed me to these 3 options that I mentioned, but even entering into the heavenly planets after dying or even conquering them will not give me any happiness, any satisfaction. So I just surrender onto you. Implicit in that is this. Yes, Anuradha Mataji. Okay, we'll talk later. All right. Nikunja Sundari Mataji, you're there.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Let's go. Sanjaya Uvacha.
Sanjay Uvacha.
Eva Muktva Hrishikesham.
Eva Muktva Rishikesham.
Gudakesha Parantapaha.
Gudakesha Parantapa.
Nayotsya iti Govindam.
Nayotsya iti Govindam.
Uktva tushnim babuvaha.
Uktva tushnim babuvaha. Translation. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent.
Thank you. Next verse. Rajavilasni Mataji, you're there.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Tamuvacha Hrishikeshaha
Tam uvacha Rishikesha
Prahasan iva Bharata
Prahasan iva Bharata
Senayorubhayor madhye
Senayor Ubhayor Madhye
Vishidantamidam vachaha.
Vishidantam Idam Vachaha. Translation. O descendant of Bharata, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna.
Thank you. So from here, Krishna starts his instructions from for the Bhagavad Gita, and we can see that he starts off from verses 11 to verse 30. Krishna analyzes the difference between body and soul, and in fact, it is. You can tell me after the few shlokas what is very peculiar about the shlokas. You can answer me later. Parth, you raised your hand up. Is there a question?
Oh no, that was from when you asked Tejas.
Got it. All right, thank you. Priyanka Sharma Mataji from San Jose.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha
Ashocyananvashoschtvam
Anushchasyan anvosochastavam
Prajnavadamscha bhashase
parajnavadamscha bhabase
Gatasunagatasumscha
Gathasun agathasumcha
Nanushoshanti pandita.
Nanu sochanti pandita. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead.
So here, how many devotees remember about the 36th verse of the first chapter where we discussed the aggressors and how the Kauravas were aggressors and killing them would not be sinful, but Arjuna did say it is sinful, and how we resolve that issue. In this particular verse, Krishna starts off by calling Arjuna, you are a fool. Indirectly, he calls him like that because you are speaking so many learned words, but you are missing the point. The Arthashastras and Dharmashastras, they are all well and good, but when it comes to Jnana Shastras, then they take precedence, or the Adhyatma Shastras. A simple example is that to stop a person who is driving on a car and stealing his car, is it sinful or no? At a gunpoint, it is technically that event is called carjacking. Doing it means you just stop a person, you put a gun at their head, and then you drive away with their car. Is that sinful or not? Yes or yes? Yes. Suppose if it is a police officer whose car broke down and he's waving the gun and pulling out the passerby and taking the car, it doesn't constitute sin because that is for a higher purpose. So here, if you see in the purport, the idea is the social and the religious principles are great, but the spiritual principles are beyond. So the first thing Krishna is saying to Arjuna, oh Arjuna, you're acting as if you know things, but actually you are not aware of them. That is one thing that it is mentioned here. And the other point, the wise lament neither for living nor for dead. It doesn't mean, let me pick, I'll pick on one particular person. I think that is Sirisha Mataji. So Shirisha Mataji, she reads Bhagavad Gita and she reads this verse and she takes it to the heart. And then Anvaya comes in. Anvaya, by the way, who is unfamiliar, Anvaya is her daughter who just turned 5 yesterday. So she comes in and she says, "Mother, I'm hungry. I want to eat." And then Shirisha Mataji says, "Oh, Anvaya, you are not the body, the soul. The wise neither lament for the living or for the dead." Why? Just think about it. The idea there is we neither lament for the living nor for the dead, as in we don't see them based exclusively on their bodily constitution or their bodily visibility. But that doesn't mean you don't take care of your dependents nor of yourself. Even if you are really like somebody gets, unfortunately, unfortunately, it's a possibility because it looks like I think that's what is happening in the world. Correct me if I am wrong. So unfortunately, somebody might get COVID. And he gets or she gets COVID, and the family member says, seriously, you need to go to hospital. The wise neither lament for the living nor for the dead. I am not the body, but the spirit soul. Well, people will say, sure, I think we need to get him into a hospital that not only has a good fever reducing capability, but also, psychiatrists are also there in that hospital. Because the idea there is self-preservation is needed, but not to the point that one gets attached neither to here nor to there. In the same vein, a person, the other extreme example is this, Tejas, you have to help me if I'm wrong, but cryogenics, wherein freezing the dead bodies and storing them till somehow or other we can figure out a life that can be infused back into dead bodies. That's what is called cryogenics, if I'm not mistaken. It is just meaningless. That's just so unbelievable that I mean, you should talk to people who have this fascination, and that is a fascination for science fiction people. Yes, all I need to do is pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, and when I pass away, they'll take and preserve my body very, very carefully till they figure out a way where they can download the program of my life into that particular body, and I'm just active again and going on like this. You should ask this question. If you have died at 85 years old with serious blood cancer, which you are suffering for last 6 or 7 years, extremely painfully, and somehow or other they figure out a means to put life back into that body, would you like to come back as an 85-year-old person still having leukemia in your body or blood cancer? It's just one of those things. So having this fundamental knowledge gives us a clear distinction between what is eternal and what is worth pursuing for in this life, and what is temporary that doesn't need too much of pursuing. Can I give another example and then we can go ahead? Or should I continue to go on?
Yes, Prabhu, please. Example.
So this time I'll pick on Tejas. Yeah. So Tejas, for a long time, he had been eyeing the Nissan Z. I'm just putting your words, Tejas. Tejas is a very nice child. I don't think he's lusting after a particular car, so I'm picking on him. So forgive me, Tejas. It's okay, right? All right. He's been really looking forward for he growing up. He liked a particular model of the car. Let's go with Nissan Z, sports car, like it. And then his goal is, as soon as my college is done and I have enough money, I'll buy a Nissan Z. So he gets the money, he gets a job, he gets the money. He's not yet married. Fortunately or unfortunately, let's not get there. And he buys a brand new Nissan Z. And then he is excited. He tells his parents that, I bought this. And then the parents are also eager. And then Tejas drives the car home. And then they hear the garage door going. The garage door is going up. And then the car goes inside. And the garage door goes down. The garage door goes down. 2 hours passed by and his mother says, I don't see Tejas. 2 hours also is a long time, but just for the sake of argument. I think his mother will be like ready to check on him if it doesn't come in 5 minutes, but that's a different story. So 2 hours passes by and he doesn't come. His mother is confused. What's happening? And he goes and she sees that the garage door, the car is there, the garage door is closed, and Tejas is sitting in the car. And his mother says, what happened? Why don't you come inside home? He just, no. I like this car so much. This is me. This is part of me. I never want to get out of this car. This is my life. That is one extreme example of being attached to the body. Here the analogy is the soul is Tejas and the Tejas's body is the car. So one extreme example is that I'm so attached to my body. And the other extreme example is that, Tejas, don't mind, I'll pick on you again. So the same car that, Tejas kind of, he's like, somebody tells you, Tejas, you know what, you're too infatuated with your car and it's not good. And you should give up, you should become more renounced. This attachment is not wise or good. And Tejas has this dawn of realization, oh my God, that my friend was right. No, I am not this car. I am Tejas Srivasa. I am separate from this car. My identity is separate. And then after driving for some time, the service light shows up. The check oil shows up, the indicators. Tejas is like, what's the difference? How does it matter? I am not this car. I have nothing to do with this car. This car is not me. And then after some time, one day morning, after many months of neglect, one day morning, he starts the car, and the car never starts. So that is another extreme example of not taking care of the body, because this body is gift from Krishna. And next few verses, we should at least have that perspective. That's all I wanted to say. You have some questions in chat. We are doing okay. Any questions that I need to be addressing?
There were two questions not on the text, but the meter, how I will go by. One Prabhu asked how we do the meter for the verses. How to know the meter of a verse, Satyam Go Prabhu?
So that is a big topic. There are Vedas and there is something called Vedangas, and there are 6 Vedangas. The 6 Vedangas are Nyaya, Nirukti, Jyotish, and few of them. But one of the Vedangas is called Chandas. Chandas means meters. Now, when the Sanskrit verse is composed, it is set to a particular meter. And that meter is something already defined in the Vedic literature. So for example, there is a meter called, the most common is Anushtup and Trishtup, and then there is Shardula Vikriditam. There is called Malini. There is another meter called. There are many meters like this, and the meters are nothing but just the musical notation. Tak, 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 tak. So the short and the long form of the vowels go. Tak, tak, tak is the short, and then just little bit is the it goes. So that's a nutshell of what the meters are. Obviously, it is way beyond the scope of Bhakti Shastri, but it just gives you a nutshell. By and large, that's the reason why you couldn't just read Vedic literatures. You had to go to the Gurukul, and where they would not only teach you the mantras, but also the rhymes in which it goes. And believe me or not, um, in Sanskrit, the pronunciation matters a lot. And then because you can say muda, move with a soft the, mudha means happiness, and mudha means a fool. Just the pronunciation can make a whole other meaning. So just a short thing of Sanskrit. I don't want to get into details. Otherwise, we will never get to what we were planning to discuss today. And then,
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
One more question, Prabhu asked, why it is mentioned that Bhishma is obliged to take the side of Duryodhana because of his financial assistance?
Correct. In Mahabharata, he mentions explicitly saying that I'm taking the side of Duryodhana because of the financial assistance we received from him.
Sure, Prabhu. Divyangi Lalita Mataji asking a question. Mataji, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Prabhu, you had mentioned about the 4 options that Arjuna had. I captured 3 of them. I missed the last one. The ones that I have is like forego and live by begging, fight and kill relatives but will be in grief. And the third one is die in battle and go to heavenly planets.
I thought I mentioned 3, Mataji. And
3.
then
Oh,
the fourth obvious choice was to accept or listen to Krishna and do whatever he says.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. I didn't mention that. To be honest with you, I think you are very good at capturing the notes. I just mentioned 3 choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
We are going good, right? Can we go to the next few verses then?
Sure, Prabhu.
Because I do want to spend some time on this particular verse. Sitarani Mataji, you're there?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Natvevaham jatunasam.
Natve eva jatumasham.
Natvam neme janadipaha.
Natvam neme janadipaha.
Nachaiva na bhavishyamaha.
Nachaiva na bhavishyamaha.
Sarve vayam atah param.
Sarve vayam atah param. Translation: Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us ceases to be.
So thank you, Sirisha.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Matthew. Can you open the purport? Because this is a very important verse that we will discuss with purport, because one of the tenets of Gaudiya Siddhanta, in fact, doesn't matter tenets of Gaudiya Siddhanta, even the Ramanuja Sampradaya and the Madhva Sampradaya, they have this, and this is a bedrock, or this is a fundamental verse that lays the foundation to the understanding of Jiva and of Krishna. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In the Vedas, in the Kata Upanishad, as well as in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the maintainer of innumerable living entities in terms of their different situations according to individual work and reaction of work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is also, by His plenary portions, alive in the heart of every living entity. Only saintly persons who can see within and without the same Supreme Lord can actually attain to perfect and eternal peace. Nityo nityanam chetanaschetanaam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman tamatmastam yenu pashyanti dhira tesham shanti shashvati netaresham. The same Vedic truth is given to all persons in the world who pose themselves as very learned but factually have a poor fund of knowledge. The Lord says clearly that He Himself, Arjuna, and all the kings who are assembled on the battlefield are eternally individual beings, and that the Lord is eternally the maintainer of the individual living beings, both in their conditioned and liberated state. So if you can, that verse Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam, when you read Srila Prabhupada's books, it comes time and again. The reason being for that is Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Among many eternals, there is one eternal. Among all the Nityana, there is one Nitya. And of all the Chetanas, there is one Chetana. So there is a clear differentiation between those who are eternally existing and that one that amongst them is the main particular person. So in this particular verse, Krishna, if you can see, every verse of Bhagavad Gita has such meaning. If you can just start contemplating in it, you'll get some amazing meanings. In this particular verse, Krishna says, Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipa nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayamataparam. He has categorized, first of all, the jivas. Krishna is making the differentiation. Never there was a time when I did not exist. And he says to Arjuna, you did not exist. And then he points to all those kings and he says, never these kings did not exist. So here, Krishna has made a differentiation between himself and all the other people. Oh, okay. Well, perfect. Krishna has made the differentiation, but it is only now for present, because obviously I'll pick on somebody, so please forgive me. Rupasagara Prabhu. So Rupasagara Prabhu and I are two different people, and obvious, nobody is going to mistake us for one. We are not one. And I'll add Ram Vijay Prabhu to it. We are not. We are three distinct individuals. We are never one. Oh, that's true. You are three distinct individuals only till you are alive. After you die, it all gets merged into one. Everybody becomes one. And is that's a relative argument, right? Is that a logical argument or not? But hey, yes, now you are different, but after that you are one. Another example, if Anushri and Anshu go to the same school, but they are in different classes, but after their, Anushri and Anshu are siblings. They are Pavani Bhakti Mataji's children. Now, they go to different classes at school, but after they go back home, do they go to different homes? They go back to the same home. So that is the argument. The Mayavadis say, after you die, everybody becomes one. And let's see what does Srila Prabhupada have to say and what does Krishna has to say. If you can continue reading that purport. The same Vedic truth given to Arjuna is given to all the persons in the world who pose themselves as very learned, but factually have poor fund of knowledge. The Lord says clearly that he himself, Arjuna, and all the kings who are assembled on the battlefield are eternally individuals, and that the Lord is their eternally the maintainer of the individual entities, both in their conditioned and liberated states. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the supreme individual, and Arjuna, the Lord's eternal associate, and all the kings assembled there are individual eternal persons. It is not that they existed as individuals in the past, and it is not they will not remain eternal persons. Their individuality existed in the past, their individuality will continue in the future without interruption. Therefore, there is no cause for lamentation. So you can see that I, Rup Sagar Prabhu and Ram Vijay Prabhu, we are eternally existing in the past. Because Krishna is saying, not only giving, qualifying or quantifying the different individual souls, but he's also giving the time gap. He's saying, never was there a time that I did not exist, or you did not exist, nor in future shall we never cease to be. So with this particular verse, Krishna is saying that the individuality of Jiva and himself, it's not going to change. If in future everybody merges and becomes one, then Krishna will not stress the individuality in future. Neither in future shall we cease to be. If we all get merged, then Krishna shouldn't say that. If that were true, then Krishna's words are false. But the premise we started off in Bhagavad Gita is that the words of Krishna are absolute truth. But we can see how Mayavadis can twist that argument. We'll do a little bit more on that particular purport, and then you can see Srila Prabhupada read so many arguments which are given by Mayavadis and how to counteract them. The Mayavad theory that after liberation, the individual soul, separated by the covering of Maya or illusion, will merge into impersonal Brahman and lose its individual existence is not supported herein by Lord Krishna, the Supreme Authority. Nor is the theory that we only think of individuality in the conditioned state supported herein. Krishna clearly says herein that in the future also the individuality of the Lord and others, as it is confirmed in the Upanishads, will continue eternally. This statement of Krishna is authoritative because Krishna cannot be subject to illusion. If individuality were not a fact, then Krishna would not have stressed it so much, even for the future. The Mayavadi may argue that the individuality spoken of by Krishna is not spiritual but material. Even accepting the argument that the individuality is material, then how can one distinguish Krishna's individuality? So let me explain a little bit here, then we can get into it. The Jiva, Mayavadis also agree to this fact, that the Jiva, when he is in ignorance, which means when the avidya completely covers them, then they take on the material bodies. But otherwise, when the covering of Maya goes away, then you become God. So even they agree that avidya or ignorance means that I am having a conditioned body. The Mayavadis are saying, wait. That is not what Krishna says here. Krishna is saying, because in this conditioned state, you and me are conditioned, I'll become somebody. I'll become Akshay. So, Akshay and you are conditioned people. And that's why you are, Akshay is in ignorance, and you are in ignorance. And that's the reason why we have this duality. There is Akshay and there is Srivasa Pandit Das. Otherwise, there is no difference between Akshay and Srivasa Pandit Das. It's all one and the same. The counter to that is, if I am in ignorance and Krishna, who is a same like me, is also in ignorance because he is here, then how can you say that what Krishna is saying here makes sense or is it even worth it, because he's under ignorance, I am under ignorance. It's like two completely drunk people, so drunk that they barely can walk, and then they stumble into the class that they were supposed to take exam. They completely forgot about it. They drunk and they are in Tejas's class, and they come and they want to take the exam, and one drunk is asking the other drunk, "What's 2 plus 2?" The other says, "You don't know that much too? What a useless fellow. It's 5." The point here is, if Krishna is in ignorance, Arjuna is in ignorance, then what is the value of Krishna's Bhagavad Gita, and why is it even worth reading? Why are we wasting our time reading? And that's so completely, it's a wrong argument to say that, this is Krishna and me are the same. Let's complete that purpose. So far, so good. Questions? Is it clear? Because this is one of the foundational verses of Bhagavad Gita. This clearly gives a distinguishing factor. And for Gaudiya Vaishnavas like us, this provides a very strong platform to face, to refute, and to be firmly denying the Mayavad philosophy on a very logical basis. Nitya Tarangini Mataji asks, do Mayavadis worship Krishna? They worship Krishna, Ganapati, Lakshmi, Durga, Kali, Ganesh, Shiva. Doesn't matter. For them, it's just any forms of gods, demigods are mere manifestation of Maya. And the actual truth is Brahman. That is only one truth, and that is the eternal truth, which is formless, which doesn't have any qualities, which is infinite. Anything that has qualities or form, which means it's Maya or illusion. So you pick and choose. You want to worship Krishna, Ganesh, Parvati, Shiva, Brahma, doesn't matter. Is that okay, Mata? And later, and later you have to graduate, mind you. All these forms are temporary and they're just modes of material nature. You have to graduate. After that, you give up these forms and actually graduate to Brahma. But when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we realize that the absolute truth is Bhagavan, or he is full of qualities and attributes, and that is the highest nature, and Brahman is his subordinate nature. Any questions, any comments? Because we can complete this particular thing and we can take more. Is everybody getting my flow, or people are thinking that maybe it's a real life drunkard giving Bhagavad Gita class?
No problem. Thank you. We have 2 questions more. You want to take now or after reading, Prabhu?
No, we'll take now. It doesn't. Questions are important. We'll try our best.
Priyanka Mataji is asking, when individual living entity go back to Goloka, what form does they get in Goloka? Does they attain?
So it's mentioned in Brahma Samhita. Let me look up that verse. The verse is befitting their positions, they are giving ornaments. Let me look it up. You can put it. So the verse number for those who wants to look up is Brahma Samhita 555. And it's mentioned Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bhiti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaurava Sevya Bhavai Sanchintya Tasya Satrishim Tanuma Purete Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. The translation: I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, the meditators of whom, by meditating upon him under the sway of wrath, amorous passion, natural friendly love, fear, parental affection, delusion, reverence, and willing service, attained to bodily forms befitting the nature of their contemplation. So the Brahma Samhita gives that in the Nectar of Devotion, we read that during the sadhana stage, we have our material bodies. I'm a man, somebody is a woman, old, young, all these dualities exist. But when one performs sadhana and perfects one loving relationship with Krishna, then you start meditating upon Krishna in one of the five aspects of love towards Krishna. Either it is in the Shanta, or it's in the Dasya, or it's in the Sakhya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya Ras. So you naturally get attracted to Krishna, and then once you perfect it, then you get, as it is mentioned, they get the bodily forms and the paraphernalia and everything based on the nature of their contemplation for Krishna. Is that okay?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Sachin Prabhu has a question. Prabhu, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Thank you, Mataji. Prabhu, I had a question regarding spirit soul that we call as Jivatma. So I think in the purport Prabhupada had mentioned the spirit soul Jivatma is eternal, ever existing and primeval. Does this mean that the Jivatma and the super soul, which is Paramatma, were always present, even in Goloka?
So they are always present. Not Goloka is not just the place or the resting place for all the spiritual beings. Krishna, it is mentioned that this material world that you see, ours is a small tiny planet, and then if you can go and see the stars in the sky, there are unlimited number of stars, and it's hard even to fathom and see where is what. And then apart from that, you will see that this is the Earth planetary system, the Svargalokas, and the hellish planets in the bottom. And this whole, and with one sun and one moon, this whole thing is packed into a ball, and that ball is floating on the ocean of Garbha, or the causal ocean. And infinite number of such universes are there, hosting unlimited number of living entities. And this Sachin is mentioned as 1/4 of God's creation. And the 3/4 is a spiritual world where, again, just imagine if just 1/4 of infinite is what you can see, and what should be 3 times that of it. So there are many different forms of God, and as many forms of God there are, that many planets or abodes are there in spiritual world, and so that many living entities who are attracted to a particular service of a particular form of the Lord. Is that okay?
Thank you, Prabhu. I think I was wondering, before the material world was even in existence, at that point were Jivatmas and Paramatmas, were they separate in, I guess, Goloka Vrindavan?
Yeah, come on in. So it is mentioned here that there are 2 types of creation. Thank you. There are 2 types of creation. One is the creation that is temporary. Actually, there are 4 types of devastations. Bhagavatam uses 4. One happens at the end of life of Brahma. One happens at the end of Brahma's day. The other happens during the Manus, change of Manus sometimes. And then one happens intermittently. At the end of Brahma's lifetime, the whole universe, entire matter, the subtle and the gross matter, and all the jivas, they just enter into the body of Lord Vishnu. And when the time for creation comes, the conditioned jivas, they again come out, and then they start this creation again. So the living entities who are conditioned, they never go back to spiritual world. They go back into the body of Lord Vishnu, and then the Lord Vishnu creates the universe. Then again the activity begins. One way to imagine is a fair. You remember that there is county fairs. They put on so many stalls, and there is activities, and there are so much of what is those merry-go-rounds, and then so much is going on. And then the government creates that land, and there is a fair, and there is so much activities going on. But once the fair thing is over, they just lift the whole thing, and then it goes off and it comes back again. That's how the material nature works. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Tarang has a question.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I had a question. Can I ask?
Yes. Mankita.
Prabhuji, how to identify a Mayavadi, like one who says everything is one, or like one who says this material creation is false? Like, how do we identify a Mayavadi, or when we speak to someone?
Thank you, Maxi. We have a whole class that Radhika Raman Prabhu gave at ISV, but I'll give it in a nutshell. Let's not get there. A Mayavadi is the one who thinks he or she is God in all respects. That is the first major flaw. The second major flaw is that all the forms of the Lord, they are the same, and they are more or less material. The third thing is that you can become God by meditation or by uncovering of Maya. These are few of the things. And the other fourth thing is they see that everything material is illusion. It's just Maya. It's something we should avoid. These are 3 or 4 in a nutshell. Of course, there are many minutiae or minute details, but we can get into it. Hope that's enough to have a start, Ankita.
Yes,
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Dhanyavad Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. All praise to devotees.
Always do prem Sarovar Prabhu.
Thank you. In Bengal, because I grew up there, the way to identify Mayavadis is they will say Kali and Krishna are the same. That's another way. Yes.
Yes. And then the other common thing in Bengal, Srila Prabhupada writes, Jatomat Tatopat. Whatever comes to your mind, that is the path.
Oh, that came from Ramakrishna Paramahansa and Vivekananda.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. I didn't want to bring up the name, but anyways.
What does it mean, Prabhuji? What does it mean? Kali and Krishna are same?
The Mayavadis, Mataji, the idea with the Mayavad philosophy is that any forms of divinity is matter or material. They are shaped by Maya. As much as Maya gives me this body, that is temporary. Even God, when He comes, takes on a body, but since there is no conception of a body in the Mayavad terminology, that means that that body of the Lord is also material and conditioned just like us. And that is the greatest offense, frankly speaking, the Mayavadis create against body of Krishna. That is the greatest illusion and the greatest rascaldom, I must say, that they indulge in. Because Krishna's body is Satchidananda. Just in our Shastras, we spend shlokas and shlokas glorifying the holy name of Krishna. Yes or yes? Sankyetyam parihasyam va sthobam hiranameva va vaikunta nama grahana asheshagaharam. Coming to the point of Ajamil, it is mentioned that he was chanting the name of Narayana while pointing to his 5-year-old son. He was not chanting the name of Narayana, thinking of Narayana. But the name is so powerful that even without he thinking about Narayana, the name acted in such a powerful way. Then what should be the form of the Lord? What should be the power of the Lord that has this kind of magic in it? To say that kind of name of the Lord to say that kind of form of the Lord and his activities are just products of illusion, that is a serious problem. And that is something we have to vigorously defend in a world that is being overrun with this kind of thinking. It is just unbelievably horrible. And please understand, the same Mayavadis, they worship gods, they worship all these bhajans, they sing all these names, all these with the impression that these are all illusion or matter, but nevertheless, these are stepping stones that we need to do to graduate before we can cast out all these and throw them into the water, because they have no bearing to our soul. Just see the perverted, atrocious, and plainly offensive theory of Mayavadis. We, but don't hate Mayavadi founder, Shankaracharya. He was the one who started this sort of thinking, but he had to do it because Lord Vishnu ordered him to create this sort of confusion and drive away Buddhism. So our attitude is that we bow down to the lotus feet of Sripad Shankaracharya. We take dust from his feet and we smear it all over our body, but then we declare war against his philosophy. It's no Siddhanta wise, we won't compromise. Mahaprabhu as much as instructed us, and we are not going to compromise with that. So one of those few times you will find me giving a war cry. And it is the duty of us. Otherwise, we won't be able to distinguish. When verses like this come, Mayavadis can quickly lift it and in any which way can pervert it or move it. Is that okay?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Yes, but I want to complete few verses. So please read the purport, to complete that purport. And if you have questions, we can discuss more. Those few purports are really, really good purports to help us understand the reason why we are so, why are you nuts? Why are you so much emphasizing on this? Why are you stuck up or hung up? Because Krishna is eternally this Lord and I am eternally his servant. It might seem nice when people actually say it, but actually that is the Siddhanta. That is the truth of who we are. And these verses solidify it. These verses don't make us morose. Oh man, I have been serving Krishna as a servant for the last 30 years. When will the roles get switched? When will I become Krishna and Krishna become myself? It doesn't work that way, because Krishna is eternally the master and I'm eternally his servant. That revival of that of that servantship is so important, because we have been conditioned since time immemorial, birth after birth. Everybody goes in this world thinking, I am the controller and the master. And when our spiritual life begins, we say, no, Krishna is the master and I am his servant. And eternally that is the case. And these verses re-emphasize that and reinforce that. Is that okay? Ananda Kishore Prabhu, is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Aditya.
I just have one more question.
Yes.
When I was reading, this is from Srimad Bhagavatam. Sorry if I'm going away from Bhagavad Gita.
No problem, Martin.
So in the introduction, I read that where Lord Shiva is saying to Parvati Devi that in the Kali Yuga I shall preach the Mayavada philosophy, which is nothing but clouded Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And he also, there Prabhupada also mentions that he does that to generate more and more population. So can you explain that? It's I couldn't understand that what Prabhupada said, to generate more and more population. Why is it needed?
So can you repeat that question, Martin? Why did Prabhupada say more and more population?
Yeah, it says that the personality of Godhead was to be so covered so that people would be encouraged to generate more and more population. And it goes on saying, His Lordship Shiva said to Devi In the Kali Yuga, I shall preach the Mayavada philosophy, which is nothing but clouded Buddhism in the garb of a Brahmana.
Correct. More and more population. I'll get back to you. I haven't heard about that. I'll get back to you. I don't know what exactly is the reference to more and more population. I kind of I'm aware of other aspects of it, but to generate more and more population, is that the reason I ask is in Kali Yuga, because it's such an age, there will be more and more population because there will be this struggle for existence will be even stronger. I mean, Parth has to, or the Vaishnavi, or anybody, they can only imagine what sort of competition, Aname or Anu, or and the kind of competition. If there were not many people, there won't be so much of competition. You can actually be happy. In Kali Yuga, the population increases and we will have a lot of suffering in that. I read that, but the subtler point of Mayavadi being the cause of increasing the population, that I haven't read. If you get what my doubt is and why it is mentioned like that.
Yes, Prabhu. I had the same confusion too. Like, why is it the reason?
And this is an introduction, Mate. If you can copy paste the exact thing, then I can.
Yes, Prabhu. I will do that.
Please do it in the chat. Thank you. Any other points before we go ahead? Let's go to the next verse, please.
One question is there. You want to wait, Prabhu, for the...
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Mataji.
Satyam Guhya, Prabhu, you can ask, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hare Krishna, Shakta.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavad Pranam. Prabhu, in 2.7 purport, it is written that how Arjuna understands the Bhagavad Gita is stated in the Gita itself. And yet foolish mundane scholars explain that one need not submit to Krishna as a person, but to the unborn within Krishna. The next sentence says, there is no difference between Krishna's within and without. So I did not get this, Prabhu. Like, what is meant by the unborn within Krishna and Krishna's within and without?
So I won't tell the name, but you can look it up, one of the very great scholars of scriptures, who was, I believe, the first president of independent India. He wrote a book on Bhagavad Gita. And then because that particular person was following Mayavad philosophy, he said, you should not worship God or Krishna. Because Krishna, when you are in tinge of Mayavad, then you will distinguish between Krishna's body and Krishna's quote-unquote soul. Because they are two different things. Because the idea is God and me are equal. I have a body, but I am God. So God also, Krishna, has a body and he has a soul. So when my body collapses, I become Krishna. When Krishna's quote-unquote body collapses, he also becomes God. We both are equal. Which means, why are you worshipping the external body of Krishna? Rather, offer your obeisances or homage to the Brahman within Krishna. Is that okay?
It's Prabhu. I got it. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, I won't tell the name of the scholar, but it's there in Prabhupada's talks, and you can take quote-unquote scholar, and then we can take a look. So that's where he quoted this from. Foolish mundane scholars is that particular person that's being referred to here.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Pranagopika Mataji, you can ask your question.
Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranams.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
So Prabhuji, actually in 2.12 you have mentioned individuality is never lost. All living entities are eternal and continue their individuality in future without interruption. So, Prabhuji, what is this individuality means? Their character, their behavior, or what is that individuality, Prabhuji?
Individuality means Atma Mataji. I am an Atma. I am eternally a part and parcel, a spirit soul, a minute particle of God. That is the individuality. And that is not changed. Or that I am not going to lose that individuality.
Oh, okay. So not the like thinking their behavior.
No,
It is
no, not the subtle body. Subtle body is also material. But here it's purely the spirit that is being discussed.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Let's go at least do a few more verses, because here we are supposed to complete at least 36 verses. So yeah, let's read the verses. I think I'll just complete a few more verses and then we can take more. Shilpa Mataji, you're there?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Dehinosmin yata dehe.
Dehinosmin yatha dehe.
Kaumaram yovanam jara.
Kaumaram yovanam jara.
Tata dehantara praptir.
Tatha dehantara praptir.
Dhirastatra namuhyati.
Dhirastatra namuyati. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change.
Thank you. Rohini, you're there? And then after that is Vaishnavi. Rohini, you're there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya.
Matra sparshastu konteya.
Sitoshna sukha dukkhada.
Shitoshna sukha dukkada.
Agama payino nityas.
Agama payino nityas.
Tam stitikshasva bharata.
Tam stitikshava bharata. Translation: O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, ocean of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed.
So quickly, in the Dehinosmin verse is a beautiful verse, because that is an easy way to understand. All of us have passed through various stages of childhood. I was a 5-year-old boy, and then a 10-year-old boy, and a 15-year-old, and so on and so forth. And when I go to somebody's house and act like a 5-year-old boy, and ask for toys, then people might be really thinking of me as having some serious mental issues, right? Because what are you talking about? Well, the truth of the matter was that I was a 5-year-old boy once, but I no longer am 5-year-old boy, which means that that body I possessed as a 5 years is completely gone, right? The thinking, the way I think, the way I behave, the way I eat, the way I laugh, talk, everything is completely different. And I'm changed with that. But the question here is, I'm not changed. If somebody asks me, oh yeah, as a 5-year-old, I used to do this, which means I was a witness of that body that no longer exists, that no longer is there, and that I can never get back. It's completely changed. So Krishna is saying, if you can deliberate on this, then you can see that from boyhood to youth to old age, as the body changes, at the end of this life, it goes to another body, just as you have experienced now. Why is there the difference? And then Arjuna is saying, but no, still they are my relatives, and I don't want to kill them. And Krishna is saying, Matva Sparshasya Kaunteya, that, oh Arjuna, only because of the sensory perceptions you are finding this happiness and distress, you should learn to tolerate them. Next verse, please. Vaishnav, you are there?
Yes, Prabhu.
Right. Yam hina vyatayantyete
Yam hina vyatyanti te
purusham purusharshava
purusham purushashabha
samadukha sukham dhiram
samadukha sukham dhiram
somritatvaya kalpate.
somritatvaya kalpate. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not distributed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation.
Thank you. Jai Shri Mataji from Knoxville, Tennessee. Hare Krishna. Nasato vidyate bhavo
नासतो विद्यते भावो
na bhavo vidyate sataha
नाभावो विद्यते सतः
ubayorapi drishtontas
उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तस्
tvanayostattvadarshibhihi.
तव अन्योस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. These they have concluded by studying the nature of both.
Thank you. Divyananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, yes.
Avinashi tu tadvidhi
Avinashi tu tadvidhi
yena sarvamidam tatam
yena sarvam idam tatam
vinasham avyayasyasya
vinasham avyayasyasya
na kaschit kartum arhati.
na kaschit kartum arhati. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul.
Thank you. Text 18. Ram Vijay Prabhu, you're there?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. Antavanta ime deha
Antavanta ime deha
nityasyokta sharirinaha
nityashokta sharirinaha
anashino aprameyasya
anashino aprameishyasya
tasmad yudyasva bharata.
tasmad yudhyasva bharata. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata.
Thank you. Jai Shri Radha Mataji, you're there? Please.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yayenam vetti hantaram
Yenam veti hantaram
yaschainam manyate hatam
yaschainam manyate hatam
vautau nau vijanito
ubhau tau na vijanito
nayam hanti na hanyate.
nayam hanti na hanyate. Translation: Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge, for the self slays not nor is slain.
Thank you. So in these few verses, Krishna is talking of the difference between the body and the soul, and that's such a relief. Half the time there is such, from the time the jiva is born in the world, the fear of death is overwhelming. It is that is so obsessive that people do their best to preserve what they have. They take the best of the multivitamins. They do take the best of the foodstuffs, whatever they can. They stay in the most safest of the environments. There is every single attempt just to maintain uh, our ourselves, while it is not an improper thing to do in of itself, but the very idea that that destructible temporary nature of mine is who I am, that misidentification is the root cause of all problems. And Krishna is lifting such a heavy burden from our head. He's saying that you can never die. There's no question of death for you. If people who are suicidal get even a glimpse, a fraction of a glimpse of what is being mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, they'll never commit suicide. Because the suicide which is in the dark way of thinking, the conclusive end or the return ROI, return on the investment of committing suicide, is that I'll be free of this pain forever. And Krishna is saying that's not true. You never died, or you never were completely destroyed in any way. You never ceased to exist. So what's the point in changing? I'll give you another example. And Nikunja Sundarinath, you might like this, I'm not sure. If a patient is having cancer that is permeating through his or her body, and if the doctor says, oh yeah, I know the problem. See, the problem is you are wearing this blue color shirt. You take out the blue color shirt and you wear the red color shirt, your cancer is kind of gone. Now, that seems really ridiculous. As much ridiculous of an idea as suicide is, because just because of the change of a dress doesn't mean my problem is going to go away. As we learn in Bhagavad Gita, we have what is called the gross body, that I can feel my hand, my eyes, my hair, whatever. And then there is also my subtle body. And these two constitutes the covering of the spirit soul. And while at the death, I give up my gross body. So this is the gross body, this is the subtle body, and the soul is within here. When at the death, I just give up the gross body, and the subtle body goes and occupies another body. And then I continue again and again. And then this is gone. So unless the subtle body is cleansed, there is no question of liberation or relief because of suicide. It's just so perverse to destroy a body that is so valuable in the human form of life. Let's go a few more verses and then we can. Actually, let's take this question. Rambabu has this question. Why the material body is referred to as non-existent? So, Krishna, the other thing is Atma, no, the non-existent is temporary. If you clearly see, right? I'll give a simple example. Is it just me or anybody has experience or have seen Lego bricks? Bricks, that is small bricks that we can use to build a structure. Okay, most of us have seen that. If you have a beautiful structure made out of Lego and it is in the form of a building, Rambaba, what would you say to that? Looking at that structure, what would you say of that structure? You would say it's a car, a bulldozer. What would you say? You would say it's a building.
Yes, sir.
But when I completely demolish that structure and it is converted, for example, into a big truck. Where did the building go? The building, is it an existing thing or a non-existing thing? It is existing, but it's temporary. So its existence is limited by the desire of that boy who's building that Legos. Yes or yes?
Yes, bro.
So it's the same way, the matter keeps on changing. And because of its changing, there is no an eternal existence or enduring existence of the matter. That's why it's called non-existent. Existent in this case is being relative to something that is eternal. Is that okay? As much as the building made out of Legos is existing in a very, very temporary way, and its existence is really not, it's only contingent upon the Legos, nothing else. Is that
Okay.
right?
Okay, bro. It's due to the duration of the time.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. And eternally, and I'll give you another scenario. Those Legos, let's take the example, those Legos are actually going to be destroyed in 1 week's time, completely. And they are being taken to a furnace or whatever place, and they are going to be completely melted. Then, in fact, that building that was existent upon the Legos itself are going to be destroyed. Then what is that building existent or non-existent? So you can see how existence of something is very relative to the nature of the eternal versus there is that fine line. This is the eternal, this is non-eternal. And Krishna is saying you have to distinguish between this. And this knowledge, my dear friends, is true of anything. Mayavadis, anywhere you go in the world, any school will say, yes, there is spiritual or eternal, and there is matter or nobody will kind of get confused with this. Nobody can, seriously speaking. Is that okay? All right, thank you. Let's do a few more verses, and then, because this is 50, I want to complete at least 30, 35 verses before we begin. Upasana Mataji, you're there?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. You're doing well. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित्
नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः
नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः
अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो
शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो
न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे
न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. Translation. For the soul there is neither birth nor death.
Your voice is very weak, Mataji, for some reason.
Prabhuji, can you hear me?
Much
now?
better. Much better.
Okay. Sorry, Prabhuji.
No problem.
Translation. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, nor does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain.
Thank you. Sindhu Kanya. Hare Krishna. Hope you're doing well.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam. Veda vinashinam nityam.
Veda vinashinam nityam.
Ya enam ajamavyayam.
Ya enam ajamavyayam.
Katam sapurusha partha.
Katham sapurusha partha.
Kam ghatayati hantikam.
Kam ghatayati hantikam. Translation. O Parth, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill?
Thank you. Sakshi Gauranga Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya.
Vamsamsi jirnani yatha vihaya.
Navani grihnati naroparani.
Navani grihnati naroparani.
Tata sharirani vihaya jirnani.
Tata sharirani vihaya jirnani.
Anyani samyati navani dehi.
Anyani samyati navani dehe. Translation. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and the useless ones.
Thank you. So Krishna gives two examples. One example he gives is Dehinos in Yata Dehe, Kaumaram Yovnam Jara. And the second thing is Vasansi Jirnani Yata. As the cloth wounds and then you get a new cloth, similarly, the old and the useless bodies of the souls, they will get new bodies. Then compare that with cryogenics. Or cryogenics or cybernetics? What is the term where you freeze the dead bodies? I don't. They just you can look it up.
Cryogenics, Prabhu.
Cryogenics. Thank you so much. So thank you, That's where Sachin.
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Sachin. So cryogenics. Krishna is saying you will get a fresh body free of cost. Instead, I will preserve my body for hundreds of thousands of dollars and then stuff it with stuff that will never happen. You can see how it's a very bad idea if somebody comes and says, I'll invest it. No, thank you very much. All right. Next verse. Sakshi Gauranga Prabhu asks, what is the subtle body made up of? So in the 7th chapter, when we come to 7th chapter, Krishna says, Bhumir apo analo vayuhu kham mano buddhire vacha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakriti rashtra. So the gross body has 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So these are the 5 gross elements. And then the subtle body consists of mind, intelligence, and false ego. These 3. 5 plus 3 are the 8 energies of Krishna.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
We'll discuss more as we go into the 3rd chapter and 4th chapter. These things will come up and then we can discuss more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Smita and Nitish, I believe.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Nainam chindanti shastrani.
Nainam chindanti shastrani.
Nainam dahati pavakaha.
Nainam dahati pavakaha.
Na chainam kledyayantyaapo.
Na chainam kledayantyapo.
Na shoshayati marutaha.
Na shoshayati marutaha. Translation. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind.
Thank you. So nice to hear from you both. You both were singing in perfect pitch. I couldn't see the difference when you both were singing. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Mukta Mataji, Haribo.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Achedyoyam adahyoyam.
Achedyoyam adahyoyam.
Akledyo shosha evacha.
Akleyo shosha evacha.
Nitya sarvagatah sthanur.
Nityah sarvagatah sthanur.
Achaloyam sanatanaha.
Achaloyam sanatanaha. Translation. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same.
Thank you. Ishwari Radha Mataji, you there? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Danat Pranam. All glory to Prabhupada, yes.
Avyaktoyam achintyoyam.
Avyaktoyam achintoyam
avikaryoyam uchyate
avikaryoyam uchyate
tasmadevam viditvainam
tasmad evam viditvainam
nanushochitumarhasi.
nanu shochitam arhasi. Translation. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Kalindi Mataji, you're there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Ata chainam nitya jatam
Atha chainam nitya jatam
nityam va manyase mritam
Nityam va manyase mritam
tatapi tvam mahabaho
tathapi tvam mahabaho
nainam shochitumarhasi.
nainam sochitumarhasi. If, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament or oh mighty aunt.
So here, this is one of the um, the curve that Srila Prabhupada Krishna takes. Thus far, he gives so many ways what the nature of soul is, how the soul is never destroyed, it pervades this entire body, it's immovable, and so many other things are mentioned. And then here, logically, Krishna says to Arjuna, Arjuna, assume that you don't believe in the existence of soul. And that's a possibility. A lot of people, actually, they think that soul is something that is a myth, that is just a bogus. There is no point in wasting time. Who has seen soul? Just you have one life, just enjoy it and live to the fullest extent. Don't worry. Krishna is saying, assume you have such similar thinking. You see the nature of the world. There is no living entity that actually is born forever and lives forever. There is always people who are taking birth, they are dying. And it is something, jatasya hi dhruvo mrityuhu, dhruva janma mritasya cha. Which means Krishna is saying that those who have born, they are sure to die, and those who die, they are sure to. If this is the cycle that's going on, Krishna is saying, why do you lament? If this is a natural thing that will go on, you should not lament. As much as a person, I'll pick on Sachi. He goes for hiking. He's a very avid hiker, and pretty outdoorsy person. And he goes for hiking all day long. He puts on his gear, his shoes, hiking boots, and shoes, and beanie cap, if it's whatever, jacket, and so on and so forth. He goes for hiking, and at the end of long day of hiking, he comes back home. Now, when you come back home, obviously you change your dress. You change from your hiking gear and boots to normal, like housewear or sleepwear dress. He is not going to start with a funeral ceremony, saying that, oh my God, I'm changing this dress, and then he'll not cry a river before he changes into the sleepwear. It's so natural for you to give up one set of clothes and you accept another set of clothes. And that's just the nature of this material existence. And when come to this firm conclusion, then even if you believe in the fact that the material body is all in all, still it is just a bunch of chemicals. It is stuff that is going to stay today and it's going to die tomorrow. One caveat here. I read Bhagavad Gita and I'm not killing the body, I'm only killing the soul. So I have the freedom to kill animals and eat it. That doesn't work. In one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada writes that unnecessarily causing harm under the false assumption that I'm not killing the soul, but I'm just destroying a bunch of chemicals, that is not allowed or accepted. And that's not allowed on any level, whether it be abortion or just, mercy killing, whatever you want to call it. But those are all other topics we can come to later. It's 3:03, so let's complete few more verses and then we can stop. 3 more verses and then we can stop. Is that okay? I'm sorry we are going a little over time. This is just the nature of it is. In fact, you have been such a wonderful crowd. For some reason or other, we haven't. If there are a lot of questions, then in any case, let's continue. Next verse, please. Thank you. I call upon Indu Mataji. I don't know who is Indu. Indu Mataji, are you there? Indu,
Yes,
I hope
Prabhu.
Mataji. Yes. Okay, good. Okay, I got it right.
Hare Krishna.
All right.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Jatasya hi Hare Krishna. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur
Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur
dhruvam janma mritasya cha
dhruvam janma mritasya cha
tasmad apariharyarthe
tasmadapariharyete
natvam shochitumarhasi.
natvam shochitumarhasi. Translation: One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Lakshmi Mataji, I think it's Lakshmi Saranga Devat Mataji. Are you there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Avyaktadhini bhutani
Avyaktadini bhutani
Yaktamadhyani Bharata
Vyaktamadhyani Bharata
Avyaktanidhananyeva
Avyaktanidhananyeva
Tatra ka paridevana.
Tatra ka paridevana. Translation: All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Akash, you there?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, yes.
Hare Krishna. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidенam
Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidenam
Ascharyavat vadati vatataiva chanyah
Ascharyavat vadati tathaiva chanya
Ascharyavat chainamanya shrunoti
Ascharyavat chainam anya shranoti
Shrutva apyenam vedana chaiva kaschid
Shrutvapi enam veda na chaiva kaschit. Translation: Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. Thank you.
So Anika Shruti Priya or Sarovar.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Dehi Nitya Avadyoyam
Dehi Nityamavadhyayam
Dehe Sarvasya Bharata
Dehe Sarvasya Bharata
Tasmat Sarvani Bhutani
Tasmat Sarvani Bhutani
Natvam Shochitumarhasi.
Natvam Sochitamarhasi. Translation: O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we completed about 30 verses. These verses talk about Krishna describing the nature of soul from two angles. One angle is to explain that there is the Atma and then convince Arjuna that even if you think that there is no Atma, then there is no need to lament. And for the next few verses, up till the 39th verse, Krishna talks specifically in terms of Arjuna's duty. Arjuna, I talked to you about the soul, but now let me talk to you about the duty as Kshatriya. And then not only to understand what the soul and how to achieve that realization by performing one's duty without aspiring for fruits is what is mentioned. And then that we will meet in 2 weeks' time and then we can discuss. I really want to thank our broadcasting team here, Sirisha Mataji, Aname, and who else am I missing?
Prabhuji, we have 2 questions which we were missed. Do you want to take it or you want to take next week, next time?
No. Who else am I missing from the broadcasting team, apart from you? And
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for being the members of broadcasting team. We can't do it without you. 2 questions. How is, please, with a quick raise of hands or just say yes or no, you are so bored that you are done, we want to just run out of the chair and then go scream into the wilderness, or you are okay, your patience is okay to take questions for a few more minutes. If you can quickly, I can feel the pulse, then we can, because I see, or we can discuss it next week. It's next or in 2 weeks' time. It's your call. Okay.
Sorry, Prabhu. Mantra Siddhi Mataji. Sorry, I forgot the name, Mataji.
Okay. Go ahead.
So the broadcast team were from Mantra Siddhi Mataji, I'm just saying, Prabhu.
Oh, Mantra Siddhi Mataji. Mantra Siddhi Mataji, thank you. All right.
So the question we missed first for from Tarang Prabhu. You can ask Prabhu, unmute yourself.
So, Prabhu, a number of Jivatmas are constant, or it's like keep creating?
They are unlimited. There are no question of creation, because all the jivas have been existing since time immemorial. In the original number itself is unlimited. There is no counting of how many jivas are there. A simple example is, it said in Mumbai there are X number of people and there are like 50X number of rats. And all they are living entities. So there are so many living entities. Just on the earth itself, it's impossible to count all the living entities. The scientists are saying, oh, we discovered a new species that is never seen before. Or Vobi Jiva. So in that sense, they are unlimited and there never been, there's no question of creation of a Jiva. It's eternal.
So, I mean, the question came because, we say, the verse says that, soul is always there. I mean, it's never born, never died. In that sense, like, so number of all the Jivatmas at the very beginning itself were there.
Yes.
It coexisted with Krishna's existence.
Correct.
Okay.
We were there since time immemorial. I never am born. I never will die. I've been living since ever. It's just I've been forgetful of what all bodies I took.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Prabhu.
Other questions?
Namasmaran Prabhu, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Haribol, Namasmaranam Prabhu.
Actually, Prabhu, I had questions. So
yes, Bhumika Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So I read the description about the soul, like how small it is, and it also says in comparison with the super soul, but it doesn't say how big the super soul is. It says the soul is very minute in compared to the super soul, but it doesn't say description about the super soul. So can you please explain? Thank you.
Well, Krishna is infinite. Actually, this is the beauty though. Krishna is the smaller of the smallest and the bigger of the biggest. In fact, the soul is so small, so minute that you cannot see it. Some acharyas say that within soul is Paramatma sitting. So the soul can be that small and he can be infinitely big or infinitely large. So he has that capacity to expand based on the situation. And in the 8th canto, it is mentioned, Anor Aniyan Mahato Mahiyan. It is mentioned, look it up. He is smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest. He has both the qualities. And how big? Infinite. There is no counting or there is no limiting, saying that this is only his capacity.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have the last question for today. Akash Prabhu, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, Mataji, thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, my question was that this second chapter is entitled Contents of Gita Summarized.
Right.
Even though like Gita has introduction says there are like 5 main topics that Gita talks about.
Yeah.
So why is that? Like, why do we say that it's...
All right. When you talk of summary, it's not exactly everything is described beforehand. The summary here is when, if you see a research paper, if you see a particular uh, scientific paper in a journal, you will see there is something called executive summary on the top, and then the actual paper contents are there, right, Akash?
Yes, please. Yes.
Summary is supposed to cover everything, but you won't find the equations, the formulas, and the sample size data and figures, and nothing like that. The idea here was that in the second chapter, Krishna actually just gave the entire solution for Arjuna, and the last verse of the second chapter, Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati Sthitva Syamanta Kalepi Brahma Nirvana Murchati. He says that a man can enter into the kingdom of God at the time of death if you are having this consciousness. So Krishna summarizes, but everything in a very seed form or in a very basic form. He doesn't talk much about himself or about the process of yoga and so on and so forth. So just like that summary of a scientific journal, the summary is given, but the more expansion is given as we go. Obviously, if summary did cover everything, then Krishna had no reason to waste another 16 chapters discussing the Bhagavad Gita that constitutes more of it, or at least 15, strictly speaking, because 18th is a summary again of the entire entire Bhagavad Gita, the 17 chapters. At the end of 17, Krishna is done with his instructions too.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Tejas has a question, Prabhuji.
Tejas.
Ask.
Hare Krishna, bro. So my first, I actually I had one question, and then if accordingly, I might have a follow up.
Sure.
So my question is that, so we say that in Vrindavan, Krishna is that's the Swayam Bhagavan, right?
Mm.
So is it that also in this when he's speaking the Bhagavad Gita, is he in that same Swayam Bhagavan Roop? Because I've heard that at that point, instead of becoming Vasudev Krishna, he becomes Swayam Bhagavan.
No, he doesn't change himself. In fact, the reason I say this is 7:7. Krishna says, "Mataha parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya, mayi sarvamidam protam sutre maniganayga." If the Swayam Bhagavan of Vrindavan was not speaking to Arjuna with the same potency, then he would have said that Swayam Bhagavan of Vrindavan is the absolute truth. I am not the absolute truth. You would have made a distinction.
So he is Swayam Bhagavan in this case.
Absolutely.
So in that case, I actually when he says natto evaham jatunasham, he's saying aham jatunasham, right? He's been eternally present and all of this, right? So in that case, isn't he referring to himself as Swayam Bhagavan? So shouldn't it be that?
Right. I get your point. In fact, those excellent question, Tejas. The reason I say is because as we read Bhagavad Gita, more and more of these will come up. He says to Arjuna, please surrender unto the Supreme Lord. He refers to himself as in third person. He says, surrender unto that Lord. What do you mean surrender unto that? You are the Supreme Lord. You should say surrender unto me. If you want to do PhD on Bhagavad Gita, I believe it is first canto, 18th chapter, verse number 4. Let me look it up before you can project it on the screen. For those who need to leave, please do, because I understand that this is over time. So I completely, if you have to, just go and 18 and 4, I believe. Let's see if that is on 14.8, 14.4. On 14.8. Yes, please project 1:14:8. Is Srimad Bhagavatam? No, sorry, Mataji. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 14th chapter, 8th verse.
One second, Prabhu. I will do.
I think both are lowercase, Mataji.
No problem, take your time. I can actually, Mataji, I can just forward you the link. No. You can hold on, Sirisha Mataji. Just I'll forward you the link in the chat. You can just copy paste it from the chat. Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Srimad Bhagavatam.
No, you can click on the chat, Mataji. If you can click on the chat window, and you can see that it's there.
Okay, sure, Prabhu.
This is what I'm going to reveal to you. Tejas is going to astound you. So your mind will be like, oh my God. Okay, here it is. If you see the translation, it's, is he going to quit his earthly pastimes as Devarshi Narada indicated? Has that time already come? Purport. As we have discussed many times, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, has many plenary expansions, and each and every one of them, although equally powerful, executes different functions. In Bhagavad Gita, there are different statements by the Lord, and each of these statements is meant for different plenary portions or portions of plenary portions. For example, Sri Krishna, the Lord in Bhagavad Gita says, whenever and wherever there is a decline in irreligious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend to myself. And the next verse we can skip. And then, yeah, so many verses are there. Go down, Api. All the above, this is where they just, all the above statements by the Lord apply to different plenary portions of the Lord, namely his expansions, such as Shankarshana, Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Narayana. These are all he himself in different transcendental expansions, and still the Lord as Sri Krishna functions in a different sphere of transcendental exchange with different grades of devotees. So you can see the Bhagavad Gita is being spoken of and spoken to the different incarnations. And at one point, if Krishna is referring to his Paramatma feature, he will say surrender on to Paramatma or realize Paramatma. So if you can see the whole Bhagavad Gita, we can divide up the verses and then we can see, we can pray to Krishna to give us knowledge to see which portion or which plenary portion is this being addressed to or this is being talked about. Is that okay?
Yeah, because actually, I've actually heard like I think this was Hari Parshad Prabhu mentioning it, and he says that because there's millions and like unlimited numbers of devotees, and each of them is having antar darshan of the Lord, so that's why he's also manifest there, and so all the leelas are occurring at the same time. So is that another perspective to this?
Definitely, it is another perspective, which the only yeah, it is possible. I would like to know the source of that. That would be nice to know.
Okay.
Maybe the acharyas must have given it somewhere, but that's a nice perspective also. That Krishna has simultaneously unlimited number of forms within him, and ye yathamam prapadyante is he can simultaneously reveal to different types of devotees based on how they view him. So that is very much in the realm of possibility. Tejas.
Okay.
And the other aspect is this, which Srila Prabhupada quotes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. It's way over time. My apologies. Thank you so much for staying over time. and we will meet each other in 2 weeks' time. Until that time, please, I pray to Krishna. May you all be safe, healthy, and be fearless in serving Krishna and his lotus feet. Vancha kalpa tarubhayascha vipasindhu dhyayucha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.